Danielle, I think, Sussman Kuntz or something, or Sussman Kuntz. And of course, he's arrested for trying to molest a black maid, in a hotel room in New York City. Here's a guy with millions of dollars at his disposal. He can get a prostitute every place. And you mean he's chasing a black woman down the halls in his hotel so he can have sex with her? Do you really believe this story? Oh, they simply come up with a story, and how do you counter it when they've got a woman who said he tried to attack me sexually? That's how you get rid of somebody, even the head of the International Monetary Fund.
It's almost as far-fetched as asking us to believe that Osama bin Laden has in fact been killed and brought back to life more often than Democratic voters in Chicago.
Absolutely. In fact, the greatest story of all is the 19 hijackers that attacked the World Trade Center. But
yes.
6 of them are still alive. They died,
yes.
and then they brought them back to life, and they're alive and living in the Middle East. The government's never denied it. They just ignore it. Go to your Internet search engine and type in 6 of the 19 hijackers died September 11th, living and well in the Middle East. Something like that. And you'll find many stories about the 6 hijackers who came back to life after September 11th. Basically, it's like the story that they told us they recently killed Osama bin Laden, but they won't tell us who really did the killing. They won't show us any pictures. Isn't it interesting? They won't tell us anything, but they want us to believe them.
Oh, naturally. And not the least of which are the magic, indestructible passports that somehow made it from the planes impacting the towers down to ground level, whereas everything else was reduced to rubble and fire. That's incredible.
Not only that, at the Twin Towers, but a similar thing happened at Shanksville. One of the hijackers' passports flooded to the ground there in Shanksville. There was no records of the plane, but the passport was there. Everything else was destroyed, but the passport at Shanksville and the passport there in New York City. Isn't that a coincidence?
Boy, we sure want to make sure we find out where the State Department gets that paper they print those passports in, right?
Anyway, I appreciate so much being with you, and I hope that, let me put on my website. It's RadioLiberty.com. That's RadioLiberty.com. My telephone number, 800-544-8927. 800-544-8927. People like to verify what we're saying, why they can, but go to our website. You can listen to our programs there, radio programs, live 4 hours a day, and you can listen to our archive programs there 24 hours a day. Get informed, and please, of course, tell others. And I want to say how pleased I am that we have a host like yours. People out there, young people, are going to be able to pick up and carry on when I'm not here. But more and more articulate young people are getting on the Internet and find other means of getting the information out. And if I can share my information with them, then when I'm not here, they'll be able to continue sharing it with you.
Well, Dr. Monteith, there's no question in my mind that it is as a result of the work of conscious and spiritually and value-based individuals such as yourself, and also just plain ornery, because you don't give up. You have not given up, and you haven't flinched in the face of opposition and doubt. It is as a result of the work of yourself and folks like you that so many young people are awakening in the way that you've mentioned. And I wonder, sir, by way of our, sort of concluding our conversation, if I could throw out just a couple thoughts that I picked up from an article here and have your closing thoughts or reactions to this. This came from your humble host is a Prison Planet TV subscriber. That's Alex Jones's online presence. And I tune in live as often as I can, but when I can't, I'm scanning articles and always building my knowledge base. I'm going to quote from this following article, which actually was posted on Prison Planet. The title of the article is Al Gore, Agenda 21, and Population Control. And this was either posted or linked to by Prison Planet, the website that is called, and I'm not familiar with this, but endoftheamericandream.com. is where this article, I believe, was originated from. I don't see the author's name, but what I'm about to read from or quote from is easily verifiable. I've already done the research on these quotes that I'm going to share. I'm going to read just 2 sentences from the story and then the quotes. The world is changing. The global elite have immense amounts of wealth and power, and they are intent on imposing a radical environmental agenda on all the rest of us. And that agenda is called Agenda 21, United Nations Agenda 21. The reality is that many of the wealthiest and most prominent people in the world are absolutely obsessed with the green agenda and with population control. Just consider the following quotes. First, David Rockefeller. The negative impact of population growth on all of our planetary ecosystems is becoming appallingly evident. The negative impact of population growth. CNN founder Ted Turner. A total population of 250 to 300 million people. A 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. David Foreman, Earth First co-founder. My 3 main goals would be to reduce human population to about 100 million worldwide, destroy the industrial infrastructure, and see wilderness with its full complement of species returning throughout the world. Maurice Strong, who used to have a pretty important role in the United Nations on the environmental cause and movement. Maurice Strong. Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? Well, I could continue reading, Dr. Monteith. You're well aware of some of these, but I wondered if that might pose for us an opportunity, again, for your closing comments and thoughts. And again, please knowing just truly how much we appreciate your time and the gracious acceptance of our invitation to be on the program.
Well, the quotation you just came up with from Maurice Strong comes from an article in West Magazine. We have copies of the original. Certainly Ted Turner, a friend of mine, Deborah Tavares, went to a meeting that Ted Turner attended within the last month where he talked about the necessity of killing off or eliminating 95% of the population of the world. One of the richest men has said within the last month, we've got to kill off 95% of the world's population. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not imaginary. This is real. It's difficult to believe, but the process is underway. If you've never been to Elberton, Georgia, it's worth the trip, and you will become a believer, as I did, because I didn't want to believe this either. But there is evil in the world. There are evil men who worship a different God. We're involved in a spiritual battle that's being fought on a political, ideological, cultural, financial, educational, and military battlefield, but it's a spiritual battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. Today, evil is in control, but of course, in the background standeth God, keeping watch of all the forces of his own. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope that people will read my book, Brotherhood of Darkness, and join us in this epic struggle for the souls of men and the survival of Christian civilization. God bless you. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Likewise, and thank you so much, Dr. Monteith, for your work and for your time. And we certainly hope you all of the very best. We wish you strength and vitality in your continued research and work. And until the next time we meet again, we wish you safe travels.
God bless, and the same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 35 minutes after the hour. You're listening to bbsradio.com and the Crimson Pill radio program with your host, Antonin Fiore. My goodness, your humble host has to take a deep breath, in part of which just to contemplate the extent of the agenda of the premeditated and calculated evil that has been planned, nurtured, hatched by so very few people in the world, and yet so few who control so very much. These aren't easy subjects to explore, ladies and gentlemen. If you remember Dr. Monteith's comments earlier in his conversation, these subjects not only are not easy to explore, they are terminal to explore for so many of the people who have committed their time and their efforts to the research of these topics. We're so very thankful that folks like Dr. Stanley Monteith have not met with that same end. At this time, I turn my attention back to the article that I quoted from near the end of our conversation. And once again, your humble host encountered this article posted on Prison Planet, actually technically Infowars.com, which is Alex Jones, one of his arms of information outreach. And the article actually originates from another website, the endoftheamericandream.com. There is no www preceding that. It is endoftheamericandream.com. The title of the article is Al Gore, Agenda 21 and Population Control. I'm going to continue reading from this article because of some of the additional information and quotes that are so germane to our conversation. John P. Holdren, Barack Obama's top science advisor, co-authored a textbook entitled Ecoscience, written back in 1977, in which he actually advocated mass sterilization, compulsory abortion, a one-world government, and a global police force to enforce population control. On page 837 of Ecoscience, a claim is made that compulsory abortion would be perfectly legal under the U.S. Constitution. I quote, "Indeed, it has been concluded that compulsory population control laws, even including laws requiring compulsory abortion, could be sustained under the existing Constitution if the population crisis becomes sufficiently severe to endanger the society." Then, on pages 942 and 943, a call is made for the creation of a quote-unquote planetary regime that would control the global economy and enforce population control measures. Again, I quote, "Perhaps those agencies, combined with UNEP, UNEP, and the United Nations population agencies, might eventually be developed into a planetary regime, sort of an international super agency for population, resources, and environment. Such a comprehensive planetary regime could control the development, administration, conservation, and distribution of all natural resources, renewable or non-renewable, at least insofar as international implications exist. Thus, the regime could have the power to control pollution not only in the atmosphere and oceans, but also in such freshwater bodies as rivers and lakes that cross international boundaries, or that discharge into the oceans. The regime might also be a logical central agency for regulating all international trade, perhaps including assistance from DCs to LDCs and including all food on the international market. Continuing the quote, "The planetary regime might be given responsibility for determining the optimum population for the world and for each region, and for arbitrating various countries' shares within their regional limits." Ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about dollars, we're not talking about trade. Let me repeat that. The planetary regime might be given responsibility for determining the optimum population for the world and for each region, and for arbitrating various countries' shares within their regional limits. They're talking about shares of you and your children. Each country given an allotment of population. I continue the quote. "Control of population size might remain the responsibility of each government, but the regime would have some power to enforce the agreed limits." On page 917, the surrender of U.S. national sovereignty to an international organization is advocated. Beginning the quote, "If this could be accomplished, security might be provided by an armed international organization, a global analog of a police force. Many people have recognized this as a goal, but the way to reach it remains obscure in a world where factionalism seems, if anything, to be increasing. The first step necessarily involves partial surrender of sovereignty to an international organization." Now, as we mentioned earlier, Holdren, John P. Holdren, is the number one science advisor to current President Barack Obama. And the truth is that the top levels of the U.S. government are packed with people that believe just this sort of bunk. Now, cognitive dissonance, our old friend, I hear it shouting in my mind's eye, so many of you, not willing to entertain the notions, perhaps unable to entertain the notions, that your government not only does not always have your best interests at heart, but quite frankly, let's think back to the Tuskegee experiments, a sequence of medical experimentation conducted over the course of more than 4 decades, involving people who